Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of No Ride Around.
Man, you know what I'm excited about? I think that
Tell
this
me.
is going. I harbored so much uh, like doubt and frustration, and we need to redo it on the last episode because I was sick. I was literally laying in bed recording it, and I was low energy, like all the things, and the audio was terrible. So I'm hoping that I don't feel that way after this episode, and that the audio is infinitely better.
You know, I it wasn't even that bad. It just wasn't as good as we usually are. Like I
And so
listened
this
to
is
it.
this
It
is
was
this is
fine.
the hope that it's better.
Yeah,
Okay.
you've got your mic and a stable internet connection.
I had
And
been I had been shitting and vomiting my brains out for like 30 hours, and then we recorded that episode.
yeah.
Um, so for the
And I
people
was I
listening,
was so
I
desperate to
wasn't
get an episode out that I was just like, I don't care.
I know. And usually you between the two of us, and take this from a position of love, but like between the two of us, the person being more self-critical is typically not me between the two of us. You know what I mean?
Right,
So I'm
right.
like, send it, And then this time I'm like, let's redo it. And you're like, no, send it. And I'm like, okay, fine. So,
Let's
but
just
we're
go.
back. I'm in a soundproof room. I've got my microphone you brought down to me last month,
Mhm.
and I think we're gonna make this thing bang.
Yep. Yep. Um I approached you as I often do with an idea for an episode, largely born out of I consume a lot of YouTube content this time of year because I spend so much time on the indoor bike, and that's a good place to do that sort of thing. And with that came watching some gravel racing, and they always talk to the pros and the amateurs and on and on and on. And there's this really pervasive message in gravel racing of being more accessible for some reason, and it stuck kind of in my brain. Uh, and so I wanted to have a conversation a little bit about what the we're mountain bike racers. We have done gravel races, but we are mountain bike racers. I'm not doing any gravel races this year. I refuse to do it. um, and so I kind of wanted to get some thoughts from you about why do people have this conception of gravel racing being more accessible. The distances are crazy for people to think that it's a more accessible racing option. And then maybe also provide some ideas about why mountain bike racing is more accessible than what people think it is.
By the way, from now on, you need to script all of our episodes this way because we've been recording for 3 minutes and 28 seconds, and people already know what the hell it's about, where it's going, and what they hope to get from this. And I think we can do all of them. So,
Yeah,
so
for
I'm in.
sure.
And I like that you're noting something. This is very important. I think this is important for us to clarify. We are talking about the accessibility of gravel racing, um, versus mountain bike racing, not gravel riding. And so I
Yeah.
think we need to like be very clear about that. Like this is about racing because otherwise we're going to end up with like a litany of people talking about the accessibility of gravel as a riding option, which we don't disagree. Like you can do it. It's a go anywhere bike, but we're talking about racing in particular.
Right.
And I think that a good place to start is to define what what is different with racing versus riding or even training, because we've been like stalwarts about this from the beginning of our podcast, where it's we want people to race not because you have to be a racer, but because putting a number plate on your bike pulls the best from you. And at the end of the day, if you're intimidated of racing, it is just a hard bike ride with a number plate. So like we want people to race, and so knowing that the purpose of it is to get the best from yourself in a safe, agreed upon environment that provides you the best opportunity to do that is important also.
Yes,
Um,
100%. I think kind of to me, the first point that stuck out to me again in a lot of this coverage that I've watched is that unlike most mountain bike races that I've been exposed to, and I won't say all because I haven't been to every race there is. Um, it seems as if it's a generally accepted dynamic of gravel racing that there is a quote unquote party end of the race, a more casual, I want to do an event mentality to a section of the race. And kind of by default, because of a more relaxed attitude towards the event, it tends to be the back end of the race.
Yeah. Well, that's what like every event, right? Um, I'm here, I'm here in Costa Rica, as we covered in the last episode, and there was just a giant convention, not giant, but like a couple hundred people convention of thought leaders from different walks of life, different parts of the world. So a lot of Costa Rican government and politicians and like high level uh, business people. But there's also like a woman who's an activist in Ukraine that flew here for this. Like some very impressive, powerful names from the U.S., both business and politically, and they're all here as like thought leaders to talk about different conversations with like economic and educational disparity and like what can we do, and so all this like how do we fix the world talk. And when I initially heard about this, I was like, okay, a lot of these things people all get together and they kind of jerk each other off on like my idea is great, now your idea is great, and yeah, our ideas are great, and then you walk away and nothing happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, Even in those types of get-togethers, there's always a group that is just kind of there. The upside to just kind of there people on bike races is that they're riding bikes, so they're like our people. Um, I don't know if gravel racing offers the opportunity to have fun no matter what part of the group that you're in.
Meaning the courses and the style of riding to Justin just isn't a fun time.
Let me tell you, I have not. I think that all events are fun. Okay,
Right.
we watched the Super Bowl last night, and I was at the at the hotel watching the Super Bowl, and people were like, "I'm not really that into football." I'm like, "Yeah, but you have Usher on roller skates in an LED blue suit. Like this is amazing entertainment." Okay, like all events I think are fun. So all bike race events I think are fun. All thought leader events I think are fun. Sporting events are fun. Like I just think events are fun, and so with gravel racing that I have done, and I've got to do a handful of events, multi days, single days, long distance, shorter distance. And because they're an event, they're really fun to start. The start of the event is super fun. All the people in the corral and the whole thing and the energy and like, we're starting in 10 seconds. Oh, love that everybody's out here. Big shout out to our sponsors. Like everything is fun. It's so fun. The next fun part of the gravel race doesn't happen until you cross that same finish line and you're done. In the middle, I have not identified one single fun part because it just hurts the whole time, right? Like it's like an indoor threshold ride
Right.
for the entire, and that's my part of the race, right? Like people that are racing to win. It is just like maximum power for the duration of the event. So it's really, really hard. And you don't get that moment where I get on like mountain bike races where you have this free spirited, slippery, serpentine, single track descent that's just like, wow, I love this sport. You know, broken up by very difficult, challenging, ouch, this hurts climbs. But you get
Mm-hmm.
that release point. Every gravel event, every gravel race that I've done, there haven't been those letting your hair down and get into like just go, oh, this is awesome. And I say that because have you ever descended at race pace on a gravel bike?
It's terrifying.
It hurts. The margin of error is a razor's edge, right? Like You even on big tires like a 50 tire, you're still not on a mountain bike tire. You have no suspension. Your tire doesn't grip up and lock up. If you go down, you're typically going down on road like surfaces with deep ditches and or like light poles and street signs and like things that don't move. You're not in a soft forest. Like the let your hair down moment from mountain biking translated to a gravel race event is terrifying. And that's coming from somebody with like a pretty decent skill set with handling the bike, right? And so for me, I've had the joy of the start of the race is super fun. Any event, anything you're a part of, events are fun. I think they're fun. That's why they're events, right? But for a gravel race, the next thing that I loved always is just being done.
Okay.
Just being done.
What do you get us? Yes, but I'm going to get us back on track a little bit because I want to identify the things that make people have this more accessible idea and then paint that against some mountain bike stuff. The woohoo moments of mountain biking is far and away one of the strongest arguments in favor of lining up for your first mountain bike race.
On board.
So I think one of the things again that really makes people glom on to the idea of, oh, I could do a gravel race is because there is in every event a super casual end of the race. And that allows people to approach it from a more casual perspective. So even though they are spending money and resources and time, they're looking at, okay, I've got between 30 and 50 miles to cover on my bike, but there's 3 aid stations and I'm going to guaranteed I won't be doing it alone because there's going to be other people out there with me riding at my pace just to finish.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of the first thing.
Second thing, a point that people think makes it more accessible is that there will be a party into the race.
Yeah, or it's I'm not out on some isolated mountain bike trail. There's maybe a perception of I'm just on a road, maybe a gravel road, but there's probably civilization close by. It just has a more approachable mentality for a certain group of people, specifically people who haven't raced before and want to try an event.
Okay.
The second thing, and you can't argue with it, is the cost of the equipment.
Yeah, gravel bikes being significantly cheaper than a mountain bike.
Yeah. I mean, $3,000 gets you, or $3,000 to $4,000 gets you a damn nice bike when there's not suspension involved.
Yeah, I just built up, not because we were going to record this topic, but just in happenstance. Like a week and a half ago, I just had the guys here at the shop in Nosara build me up one of the bikes we had just in our fleet. And it's a full carbon SRAM, electronic shifting, badass, nice mountain bike that retails $4,500, and it's like got the top end everything. Yeah. So a lot cheaper. Okay, were you pointing out all the good things first? Because we got some counterpoints to these, and I'm just going to start pulling out my sword here.
I mean, we can do whatever we want. It's our podcast. I thought before we hated on gravel too hard, it would be good to kind of, you and I, get on the same page about why people are more inclined to sign up for a gravel race.
So it's supported for an event. Okay. And then the cost of equipment being a little bit cheaper. Fair enough. What other feathers are we going to put in this cockeyed cap?
I mean, I'm going to try to frame this. I know that we know that the mountain bike ride can start at your house, but not a lot of people have share that mentality. And not for nothing, the type of person the athlete profile of somebody who will ride 8 to 12 miles of pavement one way to go do an hour to an hour and a half of single track riding and then reverse the process. That's a a pretty narrow athlete profile
Yeah,
in the total population of people who ride bikes. So
bro.
while they're
I don't think I was that athlete before COVID.
right,
Like pre 2020, I don't know how much I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna ride across Denver, an hour and 10 minutes to go ride Green Mountain
right,
and then ride back home.
I do it a lot.
Yeah, now, but I don't think before 2020, I don't think I did it once.
So again, the accessibility of for a lot of people, for my house here in Inglewood, just outside of Denver, I can ride 4 miles to Highline Canal and go get, what is it, 16 miles of gravel riding. So there, again, just the accessibility. I don't have to, for people who have complicated lives, whether it's a demanding job plus kids, demanding job plus kids plus, whatever. The idea that I can spend, 20 minutes of riding to just get to where I need to get to go do the ride that I want to do, as opposed to I live pretty close to Green Mountain, but it's still 25 minutes, and that's like my closest trail
Yeah,
in the
no,
car.
and
In the
again,
car.
yeah, but again, like I think that there's a super long laundry list of reasons why gravel riding is something not to totally crap on, and I think that that's one of them. But in terms of a race, like you're driving to a race no matter what. Like even if you're doing a gravel race, it's rare that somebody's going to ride to the gravel race from their house, right?
Mm.
So just like to pull it back in about what we're really going to contrast here, like races against races versus just the sport itself. Because I think a gravel bike's super fun. I call it a go left bike. You can
Mm.
go left, you can go right. It's single track, it's dirt road, it's paved road, it's the next town over. It's like I proved the other day riding on a beach. Like that part of it, I can't argue any of that. But with a race, like have you ever done or thought of doing a gravel event and go, well, I'll ride to the event from my house because the bike can do
No,
it? Right.
no, certainly haven't. No.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just like rolling that into the idea of gravel racing being accessible in all capacities, because when you race, you have to factor life into training. And so that's
Yeah.
maybe I didn't convey that super well.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
and then, I think the last thing is that, and we're going to have a hard time disputing this because it's, it's an intangible, but the gravel racing community, by and large, I'm not talking about the pointy end of the stick. I am talking about the first time racers. The community definitely just has a more accepting vibe of all comers, or a more publicly perceived idea of that. I think if anybody tunneled down, they would find that the mountain bike community has that as well. But there's a big intimidation factor on like the vibe of the mountain bike
Yeah.
community to get past, to then realize that everybody who rides mountain bikes is like, dude, I don't care if you're the last person across the line or the first one, like you're a mountain biker, you're my people. But it takes some like tunneling past a little bit of vibe.
Yeah, I agree with you because there is a lot of variety at a mountain bike race, and it's a bit more of a homogenous group at a gravel bike race. And what I mean by that is the super fast elite dudes at a mountain bike race are in full spandex. They might even have aero helmet. They got a $13,000 bike. They got like, like it's super. It's like very competitive. And then the other end of the spectrum might be in baggies with a pack. And so you
Mm-hmm.
can walk up to the start and you can see the difference. And that naturally creates like not clicks or levels, but you can have perceived understanding that there's like these different levels, even though like you and I say, like, they're all mountain bikers. But you can see the difference on a gravel ride. It's a drop bar bike. Kind of everybody at the event is going to be geared out pretty similar. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Everyone's going to kind of look the same, no matter if you're a superstar or have never done it before and you're going to get last place. Like you're probably all wearing spandex or more form-fitting clothes simply because the bike kind of necessitates that a little bit more. And there isn't a like everyone's kind of got two bottles, and maybe you do or do not have a pack, but it's kind of they look more similar, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
Um,
totally, it looks like a more common thread through the total group of the people there, um, as opposed to, again, having a wildly different group of people at a mountain bike
Yeah.
race. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a massive understanding that the gravel community is very, very vocal about, which is being very accepting. And those are the factors I think that really get people to go, I'm going to go do a gravel bike race. I think the things that really drive people away from lining up for a mountain bike race has everything to do with intimidation, from the people they're lining up against to understanding the equipment to the terrain itself. And so I kind of want to like talk through why those things aren't the factors that people believe that they are.
Cool. Can I beat up on gravel bike racing yet?
If you need to, um, as long as I can be the mayor for a minute and say, hey, if you race your gravel bike and you love it, that's awesome because you're on your bike and racing.
Agreed. And full disclosure, I rode a gravel bike this morning, had tons of fun. Rode 80 miles on a gravel bike last Friday, round trip deal on a tour with a guy from Canada, Ironman athlete. Freaking blast. They can just go so far with less effort, faster. Loved it. Had a great time. Did a couple of big, like burly climbs on a 40-mile route the previous Sunday. So in the last 8 days, I have done 170 miles of gravel bike riding, and I've enjoyed 166 miles of that 100 and whatever. Right? I've had so much fun on it. So I'm not against gravel bike, not at all, and I'm not going to counter some of the things we brought up because I want you all to get to mountain bikes and ditch your gravel bike. That's not the case either. But there are just some super obvious things that people have ignored in the popularity of gravel riding, where I'm like, how are you guys missing this? So let's talk about the event. You talked about how it seems more accessible and there's like this part of the pack where they're just out to do the thing and it's supported and there's other people around it. And so it feels more like welcoming, maybe if you're not at the pointing end of the spear. I don't know what that part of the race is like. So I have to go with the information I have, which is from my wonderful wife. So I make this thing. I made this thing about our life, really. And apparently I did it a little too well because Abby thinks that we can't do anything unless a bike is involved, which is really good for me. No, I didn't like on our honeymoon. This is like back in 2012. We did like a delayed honeymoon, like 6 months after we got married, or 7 months. And we went to London, Paris, Barcelona, and Venice. And Venice, notwithstanding the other three cities, we did cruiser bike tours. This company, Fat Bike Tours, and they take you out for like a 2-hour plus tour. And I didn't know that was going to set the tone for how we traveled for the next, we've been married for 12 years, right? And it did. Like we literally go and we do a bike tour or a bike related event anytime we travel, and now it's racing. And so because that's just stuck in her mind, I think that if I, which again works really well for me. She brings up last year, this is like springtime. She goes, we should go do Rebecca's Private Idaho. It's a 4-day gravel race event in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I have absolutely no desire to blow up a Labor Day weekend doing a gravel event when you're missing stuff like the Grand Traverse in Colorado, or you can go do Park City Point to Point, or you can do the 50-mile one up in South Dakota, the Dakota 5-0. Like there's awesome mountain bike races. So it doesn't sound like a good idea, but she wants to do it with friends of ours. I love the people we're going with. And my wife wants to do the bike event. I'm like, I'm in. So we're going to go out there. I do it on a single speed gravel bike. It's all I had at the time. And we get Elander's bike. I rent it from him for Abby to use. So this is a very important note. She wanted to do the event. It was her request. And she doesn't do a ton of racing, but she does racing and had never done a gravel race. Never really even ridden a gravel bike much. So she goes. I don't want to get through all the details because our podcast isn't that long, but I'll tell you this. Brian had said, I really kind of want to get rid of this bike and get something different. I'll sell it to you. And it was for because I knew what he got it for. I was with him when he bought it. So it was for a phenomenal price. And I'm like, dude, you know, it'd be cool if Abby loves it. I'll just buy the bike. And then she has one and I have, it's like, whatever, you know, anytime I can do something with my wife that I just enjoy doing, period, is like a double bonus, right? So, all right, cool. Bro, she couldn't get off of that bike fast enough after that event. By the end of the event, I'm like, you want to buy the bike? She goes, I don't ever want to ride a gravel bike again for the rest of my life. And I was really trying to like wrap my head around how much hate she had for the event because it was fully supported and it's run and operated by Rebecca Rush, who does a fantastic job of like really celebrating groups that aren't widely represented in cycling, i.e., women on bikes, and also there was a big contingent of handicap riders, and it was really fun to like share the energy of all of this around her Be Good Foundation. Right? Abby's like, get me off of this bike. She goes, it's so painful. My arms hurt, my shoulders hurt, my parts to be and remain unnamed and only accessible by yours truly hurt so bad that I can't sit down. Like everything hurts so bad. That was brutal. I'm so glad that it's over. So,
and this is coming from a woman who did 6 days of Break Epic.
6 days of Break Epic. This is coming from a woman who had never ridden a road bike before in her life. She had like a single speed get around town bike, but had never ridden a road bike in her life. And we signed up for the Denver Century and used a rental bike, and she did the whole Denver Century. And yes, her parts to be remain unnamed hurt, but she enjoyed it, right? Like she couldn't get off the gravel bike fast enough. And I was really wondering, and I'm like, well, why was it so hard? Because she was out there for Amir and I did it was a 105-mile route that Amir and I did, and Abby did a 50-mile route, and we finished about the same time, like maybe 30 minutes after her. So she's out there for a long time. But I'm like, how did you, it was good environment, fully supported. It's like, blah, blah, blah. She goes, it just hurts. Like it just hurt the whole time. It just hurt. It was painful. So I think that people forget that gravel, that was like the first mountain bike. We're talking no suspension, drop bars, geometry that's very like aggressive in terms of bike geometry, right? Like in terms of aggressiveness for bike geometry, you have like a beach cruiser where you're super upright. You have a hybrid where you're still relatively upright. Then you get into something that's like a flat bar bike, which would be a mountain bike where you're a little less upright, but you can still like see. And then as you progress from mountain bike to gravel bike to cyclocross bike to road bike, you're just getting more and more aggressive, which is a synonym for just more uncomfortable if you're not used to being in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So she rode a super aggressive position on a very bumpy route on a bike with no suspension. And shocker, it was really hard and hurt a lot. So I think that that's a huge knock to this idea of it being accessible for a first-time racer, because they are really hard and they hurt. Like they're hard and they hurt.
Yeah. I do think that there is a little bit of a misconception. Gravel biking mile for mile is the hardest racing you'll ever do, in my opinion. And it sounds like you would agree.
100% agree. You have to be riding as hard as you can on surfaces that are very hard to ride on.
Yeah. And really, like when you look at a lot of the courses, with rare exception, I mean, obviously this isn't like universally true, but a lot of the courses, gravel biking racing got popular in Kansas and Nebraska and relatively flat areas where it's sawtooth profile, it's short ups and short downs. The gravel races that I've done have mimicked that. So you don't, even when you're going downhill, you're still putting power down because it's not long or steep or you're trying to carry momentum up for the next thing. Like you're just always going. So I think people have kind of a misconception that it's easier than it is.
Yeah, it's just hard. If you're fast,
it's just
hard.
hard.
And I'm not trying to sound soft. Like I don't like to do hard things. I really like to do hard things. And so for me, like I'll continue to line up at them, not in replacement of a mountain bike race that actually fills my soul, but I'll continue to line up for them if it works out. But I like doing really hard stuff. I'll argue that like a first time racer, yes, they're not foreign to doing hard. Like everyone has a hard life. I think if everyone wrote their biography, there'd be these like crazy stories. Like I can't believe you overcame that, because the human experience is really unique and it's wrought with challenges. So a first time racer knows they're walking into a challenge, but it is really hard, and there's not a way to make it easier. Like I was riding the other day in the route coming back. Should have been avoided is a very marbly road for about a 2.5 mile section, like super marbly, shitty road out here. But it made a better Strava route if we did it this way. So this is the road we came back on, and I was riding at the pace of the guy who did this tour with me, and he ended up getting cracked pretty hard, like getting cramps and stuff towards the end. So his pace had really dropped off. I was trying to ride with him, be there for support, but it got to a spot where I was getting so beat up. I'm like, I can't go this slow. Like if anyone's driven a car on a road that has, all of the little rumble to it, that the faster you go, the better that is. The smoother it is over washboard, the faster you go. So I'm sitting there riding with this guy and I go, I can't handle it. And I had to goose it to like my pace to try to smooth out the road. A first-time racer probably doesn't have the same, physical ability to smooth out that road with 5, 10, or 12 miles an hour more average speed. So it's even harder slower, right? So
because they're literally feeling every contour of the course,
every single bump. How does that make more sense for a first-time racer? Like they get the bumpiest version of the course. So that was the first point about it being that type of ride for somebody. I had to point that out. I had to use Abby's story because she's the most recent one I have of a first timer going out and going, not only did I not really enjoy myself, but I want nothing to do with this beautiful bike that you're willing to buy, because I never want to ride it ever again.
Okay. Well, it saved yourself some money at least.
Save the girl. She's flying in. She lands here tomorrow. And I'm at the bike shop right now, and I'm like, what bike am I going to bring home for her? And I actually kind of thought, because I got this gravel bike and where my apartment is now, it's a really good way to get back and forth, but I can't bring it back. Like if I brought back a gravel bike, she'd be like, why did you bring this? What is this thing here for?
Yeah. She'd turn right back around. It's like, if I'm riding that while I'm here, I'm just going home.
She will be more willing to ride the 3 miles it takes to get from the bike shop to our house or back and forth. And there's 2 hills in there, on a single speed beach cruiser with a basket than with a gravel bike.
Yeah.
So she's got grit, but doesn't,
yeah.
So that was the first point you brought up. And that's my counter, is that it's actually even harder for somebody who's either less conditioned or less, and I'm not saying that new racers aren't conditioned. I just, in comparison to the pointing end of the spear, the back of the pack typically seems to be it's slower. That's why it's the back of the pack. Going slower on gravel is harder for longer.
I think we can also jump into distance, because gravel is what's a hallmark of gravel. They're long.
Yeah,
that's part of the deal. If you're intimidated by racing and being in an event, I think a handful of the events around here in Colorado have 35-ish mile options. But for the most part, gravel races are 50, 80, 100, 120. That's kind of the deal, right? And I know that I can do a flat-ish 35-mile gravel race in, 2:20-ish, 2 hours, 20 minutes-ish. For a beginner racer, that's probably not going to happen.
Right, which means the minimum.
And I'm not saying I'm fast. I'm just saying knowing what I know, the cross section of people that I see at the shop, you're looking at an average pace of closer to 12 to 13 miles an hour than 15 to 17 miles an hour.
Right.
So you're committing to 3 hours ish on a bike.
Right.
Um,
3 hours of work, because we've
mhm.
already identified that you're pedaling the whole time, right? Like you're working, you're hard pedaling the whole time. So that's 3 hours of hard pedaling. So the minimum effort load of a first time racer, just to put your words back into perspective, needs to be able to go on their indoor trainer and pedal hard for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to make the indoor. I just did an hour long indoor. You don't stop. You don't coast.
No
You
coasting.
know?
That's kind of gravel,
Yeah.
right? Like we'll get to the coast part in a second, because then I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
why that's not even a break when you do get those. But
Yeah.
to the point you're making, which is really good, there's a race coming up in Colorado at the Royal Gorge on April 21st. I've got a few people I'm working with doing that event. The options for distances: 12 mile, 18 mile, and 36 mile. So this is very much this race very much encourages newer racers, along with everyone. I mean, everyone's on, but to have a 12, an 18, and a 36, and they also offer duo options, so you can split the race up into laps if you do the 24 or the 36. So let's take a new racer who is really just learning the sport of mountain biking, and the course is not, it's not terrible, but it's a standard mountain bike race course where you have like a foot of whatever 100 feet of elevation gain for every mile, right? So a 10-mile race would have 1,000 feet of elevation gain, a 12-mile race 1,200 feet. That is going to take a beginner mountain biker, as long as you can shift, brake, you know how to pedal, right? Like a beginner mountain biker, at most a couple hours, right? 6 mile an hour average is a
Mm.
really like
That's a
fair
good beginner
conservative.
pace. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. 2 hours, right? That's a lot different than 3 hours, and that's 2 hours with 30% of or so of the course being coasting, where you're not pedaling. So
Yeah.
the pedal time now is down to like an hour 15. So first timer to a gravel race, you need to be able to sit on an indoor bike for 3 hours and pedal hard. Mountain biker, you need to be able to sit on an indoor bike and pedal hard for an hour 15, hour 20, or you need to be able to sit on the indoor bike for 3 hours with only an hour 20 of it being pedaling. That
Mm-hmm.
becomes a lot more manageable, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think it's important to point out, like, in the mountain bike community, people are very aware of Leadvilles and Breck Epics and all these sort of big races, right? Things that seem so far off that like their perception of racing is mountain bike racing is this, and it's usually something that for a beginner, yes, that is not unattainable because you can train for anything, but it seems so big that you're like, how could I ever get there? Here in Colorado, in Denver and Castle Rock, there's Rattler Racing race series that has very, very, very beginner friendly races. There's the Highlands Ranch race series that's like 4 races, and I think there's like a Wednesday night race series up in Boulder at like Valmont or something. That's like 12 races that the distance is between 6 and 9 miles on very manageable terrain. You're not falling off of cliffs. You're not doing 6 foot drops. I think our job here in this podcast is to kind of make the case that yes, there are big, bad, nasty mountain bike races, but there's also very reachable mountain bike races. And Colorado's not unique. It's going to exist everywhere. You just got to look for it.
yeah, well, and I think that the big thing is there's a huge junior element that is just continuing to grow at a rapid pace in mountain bike.
Mm-hmm.
And by default, juniors are going to be presented with shorter options than, like an open field or adult racing. And because a lot of these races you've brought up do have junior divisions, then they have the infrastructure to have a shorter course. Because they already have a shorter course, oh, now we can have a shorter course for beginners or for novices, and so on and on and on and on. There's not a big junior gravel racing, right? And so the events don't even have the infrastructure kind of built into it. I've been looking to put on an event. I'm in the throes of, as you know what I do, I'm in the throes of building an event in my mind that I could have here in Costa Rica. So I could have something more than just coming down and doing rides and tours and training, but have an event. And the key to making it a successful event, uh, at least what I've seen doing a lot of them, is to be able to talk to a lot of groups of people. The more groups of people you can have want to come to your event, the more registrations you can have, the bigger budget you can have, the more support you can provide. And so I want to have an event that has opportunities for, yes, endurance mountain bikers, but also gravel bikers, also e-bikers, also junior bikers. And so the mountain biking scene has done that, I think, quicker. Probably because, obviously it's been around longer. Gravel doesn't have it, thereby you don't have the short stuff. So I think that there's reasoning behind it, but again, another feather in the do your first race as a mountain biker, not a gravel biker, plays here.
Yeah. The last reason I have is it's just more fun. Like riding a mountain bike is more fun to me. And I know that putting in something as like personal preference oriented as that maybe isn't fair, but again, like I said earlier, it's our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
So I figured that was going to be that's going to come up, right? Because I was talking to a guy in the shop today. This is how bad of a customer service person I am. We really got to readdress the Gilded's idea of bringing me down here to run a shop, because this no filter attitude towards life has not stopped just because I'm standing behind a counter in somebody else's business model. But guy comes in, he's friends with a local dude here who is a former pro racer. His daughter's a very, very successful pro mountain bike racer in Canada. She won BC Bike Race this last year, competing to be on the Canadian Olympic team, like superstar, So the guy comes in, he's like, hey, Kevin sent me over here. He suggests I come and talk to you. I want to get a gravel bike, on and on and on. I was like, cool. So we're getting him set up, and he goes, yeah, so like a ton of gravel biking around here. And I'm like, there's tons of gravel roads for sure. Like it's the jungle. They're all like dirt jungle roads. And on the like first glance, you can gravel bike the crap out of them. I go, but there's like 25 and 28%. Like you're familiar. There's 25 and 28% grades straight up the jungle wall.
Frequently.
Even when you don't want them anymore?
Yeah, even when you're done, even when you've consumed all you can consume.
So I go, with a 1x drivetrain, you're probably going to be walking.
On a gravel bike.
If you're on a gravel bike, you're going to probably be walking, because that's really hard to pedal it, especially when you're coming from, like this guy was from, Pacific Northwest, and you're coming from Canada, you're coming from a cold state. Anywhere where it's not 95 degrees and 70% humidity, the heat is going to limit what you're able to do, and the 25 and 28% grade is going to swallow you. So I go, yeah, there's gravel riding, man, but like you got to really pick your routes, and so be aware of that, pick flatter routes, this and this. Did Kevin give you some ideas? He's like, yeah, I got some ideas. I'm like, cool, here's my Strava. Take a peek. I label all of them, whether they're gravel or mountain, so maybe you can help poach some stuff. The second thing is, I know what roads to avoid based on like that marbly road or the rutted out road, or when you're riding that gravel bike, dude, you got no suspension. You have no margin of error. And so if you come around a thing and it's like all rutted out and you're in the wrong place, which you'd probably be in the wrong place, it could be carnage. So just be aware of that. He's like, oh yeah, it's a really good point. And I go, and then the last part, and I just want to be super clear with this. If you went up a hill that's like 25% pitches in it, you have to go down a hill that's going to be very similar.
guess what? You got to go down.
Yeah, like here's how Earth works. So
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. And, no suspension, no dropper post, small tires, sketchy braking position.
foreign
That's a
terrain.
yeah, that's a recipe for some heartache.
So I'm telling him all this stuff. He's like, "Wow, you really think mountain bike's the way to go?" And I go, "Yeah, I've been here for 2.5 months exclusively on an XC mountain bike, and I'm just now starting to use gravel bike here on routes that I know are doable." And I go, "But that being said, every one of my descents is a terrifying experience. And this is like hills that I know super well, terrain I know super well, and bike handling skills that, like, I'm not the best by any means, but I'm damn good at handling a bike, and they are terrifying. The descents, like, I'm pulling brakes the entire time and intermittently releasing my front brake so I don't wash out. But I'm like super sketch scared, and I'm like glad I'm a lucky human, both very good and very bad, but super lucky. Um, it's really hard. It's really hard to do. And so he looked at me. He's like, "I guess I'm going to do the gravel bike, but I really need to pay attention to where to go." I go, yeah, bro. I'll see you here tomorrow. Let me know how it went, and I'll help you if you need it, and we can get you a mountain bike if you need to."
Yeah. If you've changed your mind.
Uh,
Uh,
so, so I just think that, like, I think that gravel has become so popular, and I think there's a lot of merit for it, and I'm not against it. I think it's a really good way to travel. I think it's a good way to do distances off of the road. Um, but in terms of racing, to bring this back, if the purpose of a race is to pull out your best, and just for another way of saying that, to try your hardest, trying your hardest on a bike that has a very small margin of error and not a lot of comfort um, seems like a more dangerous proposition than trying your hardest on a shorter distance, more supple, more room for error opportunity like a mountain bike race, um, and do it at your own pace.
yeah.
Uh,
Let's adjust the terrain thing just real quick because we did kind of gloss over that. Um, Mountain bike terrain it looks more intimidating, but I think it's important to note that the ability of the bike so far exceeds what the terrain is. If the bike is allowed to work, then the terrain isn't as big a problem. Um,
okay, so no, yeah, mountain biking terrain looks terrifying. Giant boulders,
even it,
trees, narrow
yeah,
passageways, exposure. Like
loose
it's
corners.
terrifying. Loose,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's terrifying. Um, so let's use the data. Go to the numbers. What is the average speed of a mountain bike ride for a good mountain bike rider?
For a good one, I mean, probably 10 to 17 miles an
10.
hour. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 miles an
The,
hour. Like if
yeah.
like a 10-mile-an-hour average, if you take every Strava ride you've ever done on a mountain bike, odds are your average is going to come right around somewhere like 10 miles an hour. Okay? Average speed of a road bike. Over the lifetime of you riding the road bike, what's your average speed ballpark for a road bike? True road bike on tarmac.
18, 19, easy.
Yeah. Yeah. For me it's 20, right? So
Yeah.
10 miles an hour on a mountain bike, 20 miles an hour on a road bike. Those are kind of like the just like givens, right? And so when I look at distance and I go, okay, I'm going to go do like a century ride, one of my goals is always to be under 5 hours, averaging 20 miles an hour, which that is hard for a century, right? Um, but a 20-mile-an-hour average on a road bike ride, I go, okay, a century is going to be like 5 hours. If I'm going to go do a 100-mile ride on a mountain bike, okay, well, I know based on average speed, it's going to be like 10 hours, right? So it's just that two-time effect, okay? Gravel falls somewhere in the middle, right? But if your average speed on a mountain bike is 10 miles an hour over the entirety of the course, and it's got terrain that goes up and down, and you got these descents, yeah, so that's where your speed's higher. At any point in time when you're traveling through the forest, you need to move your bike from about 10 miles an hour to 0 to avoid something terrifying. On a road bike, you got to move from 20 miles an hour to 0. to avoid something terrifying. On a gravel bike, you got to move from somewhere in the middle, so let's call it like 16 miles an hour, to stopped to avoid a terrifying thing. But here's the kicker. The gravel road surface is infinitely less reliable for stopping on a dime than the soft dirt or loam, or just because there's less material on a trail than there is on a road.
And
so when
smaller
you're trying to-
tire.
smaller tire, smaller rotors, less powerful like rotors, like everything, like less powerful brake rather. Like the sheer force needed to stop the bike is going to inspire an out of control stop much quicker on a gravel bike than it will on a mountain bike or on a road bike.
Yeah. Gravel bikes are, and I think it's important. I was thinking about this, and I think I pitched this to you last week one day. I was thinking about it. I love riding my gravel bike just to go ride. I think there's awesome gravel riding up in like north of Boulder and Highline Canal, which is close to my house. I really enjoy that part of it. But mountain biking's the it's the passion. Hence this whole episode. We're a mountain bike racing podcast, and so obviously a lot of what we're saying will always be skewed in that direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously people are like, well, duh, of course, guys, you're going to say mountain bike's better, but I'm trying to use as much like unbiased information as possible to just point it out. And so to hit one more facet. So purpose of putting a number plate on the bike, purpose of doing a race is to do your best. Saturday, I raced here in Costa Rica, my first race of 2024. I didn't have a dog in the fight because like it's part of a series and I'm not going to be here for the whole series. And so I'm just going to go, it's part of my training for Cape Epic. It's just going to be a super hard, short, intense race on the heels of doing like an 80-mile gravel ride, right? So just good training. So I go, but I'm at the start line, I'm not like super jacked up because I just did 80 miles the day before. So I look left, I look right, the race starts. And as soon as the race starts, I did what I always do, right? And I get super jacked up. And I raced as hard as I could. It was a 30-mile course with like 2,200 feet of climbing and just on it the whole time, like just full gas the whole time. I came through the finish line feeling pretty jacked. My time was an hour 48. Okay, hour 48 for a 30-mile race, like 16.7 mile an hour average, balling out. There's another guy on our team here in Nosara who is faster than me. Jadir, you rode with Jadir. How fit is Jadir?
He's extremely
25 years old, born and raised in the mountains of Costa Rica. The guy, his bike actually doesn't even touch the ground when he's riding up hills. It just levitates to the top. Like, it's unbelievable, okay? He raced the gravel division of this bike race. I was on a mountain bike on my Allied. He raced gravel division. He is faster than me, especially for 2 hours. He has done this race course before. He has raced in Oratina. He knew – I'm blind. I didn't know anything. He has infinitely more ability to be better at this race than me, but he was on a gravel bike. And he was 6.5 minutes slower than me on a mountain bike. So time for time, I ended up beating him even though he has better 2-hour fitness and he was rested and recovered for the race. So how did that happen? The race course was on dirt roads almost exclusively. There was like 0.8 miles of single track out of 30 miles, but there were long descents and long stretches of washboard-like beat-you-up roads. And because he was on a gravel bike, his ability to move quickly and safely and comfortably over that terrain was limited so much more than my ability to do it. He came through the finish line, collapsed off the bike, begged me for cold water to pour down his back and on his legs, full cramps, and he couldn't use his arms. Now, he won the event. He got first place, right?
Right.
And he was slower than a 41-year-old dude on a bike that was 8 pounds heavier, who was coming off the heels of a hard day the day before. So he was limited by the equipment. And so that's a top level, pro level rider who's unable to keep up with like a kind of fast now 41-year-old rider because the equipment held him back. So why would somebody who's just getting into racing want to try to do it on a tool that is guaranteed to be harder and more painful? That's
Right.
just like a
the, the math,
hammer.
math doesn't math.
Math doesn't math.
Um,
No, I was kind of like, hell yeah, beat your butt, dude. But in reality, I was like, wow, that's a real glaring observation that says, hey, this sport is different.
yeah, it is wildly different. So I guess we'll summarize by saying this. We kind of shit on gravel racing, and I don't think that was my intent so much as it was to just kind of say, hey, you should try a mountain bike race because it's cooler, but maybe you can't do that without kind of shitting on the other thing a little bit. Um, so all that is to say, sign up for a mountain bike race. I'm going to offer never to be one to like not offer solutions. I just listed here in Colorado, Rattler Race Series. That one's a little self-serving because Basecamp is the tech support and podium prize sponsor for like 5 of the mountain bike races. But the courses are good and they're very accessible, especially the midweek melee races, which are on Wednesdays. It's a shorter course. It's like a 9-mile course on very manageable terrain. If you want to travel for a cool event and get big event vibes without having to do the big event, there is, I think, like a 16-mile Little Sugar event in Bentonville, Arkansas. And you can go and you roll out and you get the whole pomp and circumstance of a big event put on by Lifetime, but on Bentonville trails, which are notorious for being very rider friendly. And the last one I'll say is actually the Dawn to Dusk 12-hour race down in Fountain Hills, Arizona that we did. The cross section of racers who were very clearly just there, probably on like a corporate team, because I think the corporate teams can be 4 to 10 people. They were there for a good time. The course is hard if you ride it hard and fast, but it's not technically challenging anywhere. So those are my 3 solutions to say, hey, look for cool local races that are shorter, or if you want to travel for stuff, they're out there.
This speaks to both gravel and mountain, but because we love mountain bike racing, we think gravel bike racing is like this weird kind of thing that's popped out of the blue, and people will get their brains about themselves after the COVID complete whiplash subsides. Sorry, that was more information that we didn't unpack, but it's in there.
Yeah.
The I want everyone to just be inspired to do an event,
Yeah.
but know that for somebody who wants to win every time he lines up, and for somebody who takes it super seriously, so much so as to like completely like left turn pivot my life course and do everything with mountain bike now, like I take it very seriously. In the most beginner of beginners at the race is still something that like warms me, and I'm willing to stop and answer a question, point you in the right direction, to say, here's this or here's how to do that. Like at no point at the tip of the spear do I look at a beginner who's in baggies and not knowing what to do and being like, this person shouldn't be here. It's the complete opposite of that. And so if that's the vibe that has held people back from trying to mountain bike race, please know that a lot of times that might just be some stuff in your own head that like the people that you fear may feel like you don't think that way about you. Like they're so jacked that you're there and they want to encourage you to do it.
Right. Heck yeah.
Um,
Well,
so,
I think we've beat that horse for long enough. You got Cape Epic coming up soon.
bro, dude, I got Cape Epic coming up. I have been, it's we've not spent we didn't spend a lot of time on what my racing was like last year. We did a lot of race recaps, but we didn't follow the journey so much. But I will tell you, 2023 was unique for me. Breck Epic kept me going. Like that was like I wanted to go. I wanted to win that, and so I had this like competitive spirit. But ever since nationals in 22, I had like eaten my carrot, and so I was kind of floundering a little bit with like where the real drive was coming from. And looking into 24, I've made this transition to say like I just want to experience everything the sport has to offer, and so I don't think you can do that without taking a stab at the most iconic and prestigious mountain bike stage race in the world, and that is what the Cape Epic is. And so I am so jacked up for what that experience is going to be. I've never been to Africa. I've never done an 8-day race. I've never traveled by RV with a fully supported like situation like we're going to be doing. Like it's just like the whole thing just feels like a fantasy land, and I can't wait to go to it.
Mountain bike fantasy camp, but for adults.
I mean, brutally hard. I met a guy, Nico. I met this guy today in the shop, and I don't mean to get into another story. We're already at like an hour here, but I met this guy today. He came in. He goes, "Hey man, I was told," he has a cool accent, so this isn't how he sounded, but I'm not going to fake an accent because I'll sound like an idiot. But he came in. He's like, "Hey man, I was told to come in here and talk to you. My name's Nico," and I'm like, "Hey Nico, nice to meet you, dude." And he's like, "Yeah," and we actually had video of Cape Epic playing on the TV in the shop. And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm actually from South Africa. I've done that like 7 or 8 times. I heard you're going. I wanted to kind of talk to you." And I'm like, "Oh man, that's amazing." Well, the more we talked, the guy is also into body work and like holistic nutrition and things like that. And he works with athletes. And then the more we talk and the more we get to know each other, he doesn't work with athletes. This dude was the body worker for Nino Schurter and several other high level world tour level riders and racers throughout his career and currently South African team. And I'm like, "Wait, you do body work with Nino?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he lives here in Nosara. And so, since
the guy, not Nino,
not Nino, Nico. Since we've been recording, he sent me a message like, "I'm going to visit him for body work," and start to chat more. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. So the stars are aligning. If I can get the guy who does body work on Nino to help my haggard little butt, then I know I'm working in the right direction for Cape Epic for sure.
Can I pick on you for yoga when I was there?
Totally.
I had no idea. I don't just like how much your hips didn't move.
You mean how bad I am?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how good can you be at yoga? But you were bound up.
Bro, you had super judgy laser eyes vibes directed right at me, and you're just flopping your hips open like a fucking Barbie doll. And I'm like, the only reason I didn't feel so bad is because Victor was next to me, and
he was probably worse.
Oh man, like I was dead nuts in the middle between you, which you have like impressively floppy ability to move your body around.
I'd never done yoga. I was fully shocked at what I could do.
Yeah, it was really impressive. And then you're right. I was not having a really easy time of it. But then poor Victor, one stop over, I was like, "Oh man, all right, I feel all right." But it really goes to show, like, I can perform really well and have all of these things that could be so much better. And, it's natural to think, man, if I worked on that, what would it look like? But there is a limit, right? Like, I've done stretching before and then like overstretched and hurt myself too. So, you got to walk the line.
Yeah. Well, and it's that whole discussion of flexibility versus mobility and what can you do with it and all that fun stuff.
Right.
But it was kind of neat to do yoga looking over the ocean and the jungle canopy. That was kind of neat.
And, I did feel a lot better leaving there.
I did too.
Yeah. But I think I'd feel really good too if I just lay down on if I just gave myself an hour and 15 minutes to kind of lay on my living room floor and roll around a little bit with chill vibe music going, I'd probably wake up or stand up feeling pretty good too.
Yeah, same. I did when I got back. I did a mobility session just at home, and it was nice. It wasn't as nice, but it was nice.
Yeah, I said I was like, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna do these moves. I can see it all. I have not done them at all, and I haven't gone back.
No.
And so it's weird what we do. Like it's weird how we like we are always trading time for something, and our
Mm-hmm.
priorities can really be identified easily if you just simply look and say, where do I spend most of my time?
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think behavioral change requires like much deeper level analysis than that. You just go, okay, here's my whole day. Here's where I spend most of my time. Is that the thing that's most important to me? If the answer is yes, then you're doing things right. If the answer is no, then there's like there might be the source of the strife in your life. You know,
Yeah. Pretty big
um,
disconnect there.
totally. So I'm here and I'm in like surf capital of Costa Rica. I'm in a yoga capital of Costa Rica. I'm in smoothie bowl capital of Costa Rica, and I'm riding a bike every single morning and a lot of nights. And it's because it brings me infinitely more joy than any other activity on planet Earth. So even though these other great opportunities are here, I'm choosing to spend almost every time not working on the bike. And so that's just what I'm going to do. Like I've wanted to become a surfer. It's not happening. I wanted to go back to that yoga class. I'll do it at the next camp. Like,
That was a good day 3. That was a good day 3, like post ride. That was
totally day
money.
3 after the last ride, it's that, and then we're kind of done. You know what I mean? Just chill out,
Yeah.
or get into a bull ring with live bulls tossing people off, and then you're in there like an idiot. Like, what was I doing down there?
Can I tell you the struggle? Like uh, the sensory overload. Like usually I don't have that problem where like loud noises and flashing lights shut me down, but that experience shut me down. That's not normally a problem that I have, but the guy obviously on the mic, I don't speak Spanish, and he's just it's nonstop, right? And it's
Oh yeah,
loud, and it was just bombardment in every way you could imagine. And I got there and I was like in a pretty good mood, and then the more noise and the more like the fireworks and the fire, and then we go outside and it's the fairway, like the midway with all the games and food. Dude, I was having a full on crisis while I was there. And
well,
like I it's just like I just had to like swallow it.
that's it goes to show like you really should always be concerned about the quietest guy in the room, because while you were having that massive crisis, it came across externally as just stone face quiet. You were just stone
No,
faced quiet. So, like,
no.
always be scared of the quiet guy in the corner of the room.
I
He's
was just
exploding on the inside.
I was just chewing back a panic attack the whole time.
I can't believe they just let anyone in the dirt of the bull ring.
You could just
And,
you guys like stood up, and I was like, "Where are you going?" And we're like, "We're going down to the bull ring,"
yeah, I didn't really
which was
know
more
where
than
we
I
were
could
going.
handle.
I didn't really know where we were when Amir's like, "Let's go down." I was like, "Yeah, let's go down, get closer." Like, stand outside of the
Like
like
behind
wood
the wooden
slab
fence,
wall.
but
Yeah,
on the ground.
yeah. And next thing you know, we're like walking across the dirt that I just watched a guy get 8 seconds launched across,
Yeah,
minutes earlier. And now we're there. And then I realized that that is the game, is
yeah,
that after the bull launches the dude, then they got to corral the bull back in the chute.
yep,
But before that, it's the time for all the idiots, like people like me, to get as close as you can to the bull without getting gored,
yep,
which that is it. Like the
yep.
National Western Stock Show in Denver, they're not allowing that. I don't think PBR Finals
No,
in Vegas lets like
no.
any idiot with an imperial beer in his hand to go down into the dirt and wave their hat around at the bull.
There was no barrier to entry for you guys to go and potentially get really fucked up.
No, not at all.
uh,
And not physically in the space, and also for whatever reason, not in my own brain. Like in my now, okay, we just did a whole episode, and I talked extensively about how dangerous gravel racing is for a newer rider, and I'm willing to walk into a bull ring in a country that I'm sure I don't have health insurance. Like I'm sure my shit does
no,
not cover
you're
medical
not
here.
covered. No, no,
Like, and,
it's the most out of network.
and I don't know what like the response time is when a bull's horn is in your abdomen, like from that to not being in that situation to like sewn back up and at home with like liquid food diet? Like, what is the time gap there?
How far is it to Liberia?
Yes,
Because that's your first real hospital.
it's not a good situation, and yet I'm
No.
down there.
Yeah.
But I don't like riding my gravel bike down a 20% grade. So
yeah. Well, do with that what you will.
again, our behaviors tell us what we really think. There you have it.
Totally. Oh, all right, guys. Well, I think we're gonna stop yapping. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you.